As far as the papers are concerned, as promised, Sharif and Kate are with us. So where should we start? Your turn, Sharif.
Right, we will start with
Daily Mirror.
fox hunting.
Okay.
So the Mirror is published an article highlighting support for the fox hunting ban, saying, according to a latest poll, 85% of voters support the ban, which is interesting because the Telegraph has an article from someone from the pro-fox hunting lobby saying that this is about hatred of people. So apparently 85% of people in Britain hate people.
I think everybody hates people, just not everybody, but some people. You go to the Boxing Day sales, you'll hate people soon. In fact, you'll want to bring back hunting of other shoppers. It's interesting. Theresa May, it looks like she has been saying that she'll do a vote in the Commons on repealing the fox hunting ban, but they're now suggesting that she probably won't do that, given that there just doesn't seem to be the support, the enthusiasm for repealing the. And it's one of these things that, you know, the blue passports, much as we might joke about them, there were people that wanted them. Undoing the fox hunting ban, it doesn't seem like it's something people care about. And maybe that is, in a sense, not about hatred of people, but about the fact that it's always been a sort of elitist thing. The average person in Britain has never been hunting, has never thought about going hunting.
I think people just don't like killing for sport. It's as simple as that. It's not about hating people or anything else. It's just, you know, it's a needless killing of animals. It's animal cruelty. That's what it's about.
Although those that are taking part in hunts up and down the country will say that's not the case. They want to get rid of foxes because of the damage that they do to their land.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely the argument that's put forward. And then there's a sort of question about, well, if we are trying to get rid of foxes, why are we doing it this way? You know, if we do need to kill animals to protect farming interests, why are we dressing up and blowing a bugle first? You know, I don't know how anybody else feels about killing things, but it seems like to do it that way is not. It lacks compassion, doesn't it?
Yeah. Can't remember who was it who said unspeakable in pursuit of the uneatable. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. The Guardian.
Yes, so, OK, so we'll go to The Guardian. So the one on the front page of The Guardian that I think is interesting, it's a new drive for cheap plastics threatens world seas. So what they're saying essentially is that the rise in...
Close to our hearts here at Sky, of course.
Yeah, well, they're saying that the rise in shale gas exploration is reducing the cost of plastics. And so we were getting to a point where we were starting to consume less plastics, and that's not going to last. They're saying it's tipping the other way. And this is exactly the time to be talking about it, because I think most of the viewers are sat at home having had Christmas and have probably got a huge pile of essentially plastic tat, things that they didn't need, things that they got a quick laugh from opening once and, you know, pressing the button or whatever, and stuff that by the new year they're never going to want to use again. And I mean, of course you can try to recycle this stuff, but the reality is that we need to think more seriously about the way that we use plastics. And, you know, there are countries around the world that have completely banned plastic bags and things like that. And it is the idea that we can take, you know, buy a bottle of drink out of a plastic bottle, drink it, throw it away, and a lot of people, you know, do that most days. That amount of plastic.
Being at the airport and having to take everything out of plastic bags that I had in my case because there's a complete ban. You're just not allowed to use them at all. It is quite a nuisance to start with, but you very quickly get used to living your life without that. I mean, it seems to make perfect sense, really. Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, I think this time of year is precisely the time when this would fall on deaf ears, because of what you were saying, that, you know, this is consumerism on steroids this time of year. So people aren't particularly going to care as long as they get the presents out. And, you know, sadly, I think this might not be.
Do you try and cut down on plastics?
I mean, probably not as much as I should, to be fair. But
well, what I do is I have a thermos mug, and when I go around and get a cup of tea, I don't take a new one. I go fill this up, fill this up, fill this up. So I think that's not very difficult to do, to just in your handbag or whatever bag you carry with you have a reusable cup, and you're probably saving 2 or 3 plastic cups a day if you live like I do, sort of travelling around a lot, relying on cafes and things like that. But I think there's a lot more we could be doing still. There are definitely.
I think if there are guidelines set, I think people would do more. I think they're probably just not really aware of what they should be doing.
Yeah, so. One of the things, and it's a tiny little thing that I make sure I do, but I don't know if you've seen, obviously you've seen our Ocean Rescue campaign, and there is an image in one of the promos of a turtle with a plastic straw up his nose.
Yeah.
And so I absolutely do not have those plastic straws in our house.
Yeah, when you get multi-packs of cans, and you can always see, there's always pictures of sea life that have got one of those hooked around them.
Exactly. And very easy to get paper straw. Sharif, we're talking about the Daily Mail. House sellers made £92,000 in 9 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Basically, this is just highlighting how expensive property is in this country, and particularly in London. It's I don't know what else to say really. It's just the house market here is just ridiculous. More and more people are having to stay living with their parents because they can't afford to get on the property ladder. And a lot of the bubble is fueled by foreign purchases. So this is just highlighting the ridiculousness of this bubble in the country.
But do you reach a tipping point where, you know, the prices are so out of the reach of most people that they do have to start coming down like we saw in 2008, 2009? Or do we find ourselves in a position where we're an overcrowded little island and so property prices will always go up because, you know, by land they're not going to make any more?
Well, it's down to how much of the property market is led by purchases from foreigners. If Britons can't afford properties, if foreigners can and they keep the bubble going, then the prices won't go down. So it really depends on whether foreigners can keep up with the rising prices themselves.
I think it's not just about foreign investors coming and investing in UK property. I think we've also got to point out that it's about the lack of affordable housing. So when we're having new developments coming through, there is supposed to be a percentage of properties in them which is affordable. It looks like a lot of them, they're not really that affordable, and we're just not building social housing like we used to. And we're so restrictive about where you can and can't build and this kind of stuff.
A lot of social housing was sold, of course, in the 1980s.
Yeah, exactly. So whole chunks of it got sold off and it wasn't replaced. You know, if we're going to sell off social housing, the sensible thing would be to take the money from selling it off and build some more, because homelessness and, you know, lack of housing isn't a problem that's solved by putting someone in temporary accommodation and then turning it into permanent accommodation, because more people are becoming homeless or, you know, at risk in that sense in the same time. It's always going to be a problem, and especially for young people. And you've got so many young people who are stuck living in the family home, which, you know, is fine if you have a great relationship with your family, but, you know, not everybody does.
Not everybody does. You make a very good point. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the Pontiff. What did he have to say yesterday in his Christmas Day message? That's coming in just a second. Again, this Boxing Day morning, we're having a look through the papers, so you don't have to. Kate and Sharif are still here. Should we start this section with what the Pope's been up to? Kate.
Yeah, so the Pope did his usual festive speech. And what he didn't mention, as we've just been talking about, was Nazanin Griffiths. We thought that was something he was going to mention, but he didn't. What instead he talked about was peace, really. And I'm not a huge fan of the Pope. We are of different religious persuasions, in my case, none.
So we've ticked you off being not a fan of the royals and now not a fan of the Pope. Okay.
I'm a big old cynic, as you know. But in fairness to the Pope, you know, he makes some very good points, and I think he's really reacting to the whole issue around Trump. Recognising Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and he is really pushing right back in the other direction and trying in a way to paper over that and to keep driving forwards. And he talks about a two-state solution and acknowledges that, you know, what's going on in the region and stuff like this. And, you know, it's interesting when, you know, Trump is so awful that everybody looks good by comparison in some ways, but at the same time, you know, at least somebody is trying to, you know, push the peace process forwards.
You've talked to me about bread.
Yeah, so the Guardian is reporting that sales of sliced bread have risen for the first time in 3 years. It's a bit of a weird article because it pins us entirely on brunch. Not really sure why, but and they're kind of making out that this is people eschewing the low carb fad. But I think this is just simply down to the fact that carbs like bread or pasta or rice are cheaper than a high protein diet, or fish, meat, things like that. Simply people are trying to save money. A high protein diet is more expensive, and bread is a very cheap alternative. So that's really what it's about.
Fantastic. I know that my little boy will be eating more bread as a result of his Christmas present. One of his Christmas presents was a toaster that brands the toast with Arsenal FC on it. So
I should have put that on my Christmas list.
Couldn't wait for the shops to open so he could buy some bread.
That's a great way to go on a diet if you're actually a fan of a different team. You'll never eat another piece of toast again. How could you?
Exactly. Arsenal not playing today, I don't think.
No, we've got Crystal Palace live on Sky on Thursday. So there we go.